couple of quick practice problems, just two problems here about the money market. And the first problem says a drop in credit card fees causes people to use credit cards more often for transactions and demand less money, okay? And then it says use a correctly labeled graph of the money market, show how the nominal interest rate will be affected. So we do this, and here, and we say quantity of money, and then interest nominal. We're going to draw the supply curve of money, and a demand curve for money. Sorry, again, my pen is dying on me here, so let me switch that out real quick. I know we're going to use two different colors. You're going to be mad. So then you have interest, right? And we'll say this is like interest rate 1. And it says the demand for money goes down, so we just draw a second demand curve, and we say demand goes down, so the new quantity of, or the new interest rate is lower. So interest rates go down, the quantity stays the same because the supply of money didn't change. Now it says for part B, given the interest rate change in part A, what will happen to bond prices? Well, in the last video we learned that bond prices and interest rates are inversely related, right? Then when one goes up, the other one goes down. So if interest rates are going down, bond prices go up. Part C. Identify an open market operation the Fed could use to keep the rate the same before the drop in credit card fees and explain why it would work. So if the Fed wanted to get the interest rate to go right back up again, what could they do? Well, they want the price to be higher. So that we went from, we'll say, point A to point B, and what they want to do is push it right back to that same level, to point C. So how do we get SM to S1? And now this question doesn't ask you to draw that, but I went ahead and showed it for you to show you, yeah, now that's how we get back to I interest rate sub 1. So what could they do to decrease the money supply? Well, it actually tells us here in the question, open market operation. So we either can say buy bonds or sell bonds, and we know the Fed sells bonds to make the money supply smaller. So sell bonds, and the explanation here can be if they sell bonds, the supply of money gets smaller, therefore the interest rate nominal goes back up again, and that's the explanation. Question 2. In country Z, the required reserve ratio is 10%. Okay. Assume the central bank sells 50 million in government securities on the open market. Calculate the total change in reserves in the banking system, calculate the maximum possible change in the money supply, and show the impact on the nominal interest rate in the money market. So it's actually easier to do part B and then do part A. So we're actually going to start with part A or part B because you need to do it in order to do part A. So the first thing is to identify maximum possible change. That means we're going to use the money multiplier. And that is 1 over the reserve rate or the required reserve ratio. So 1 over 0.1 is 10. And we're going to say the initial change is 50 million, 50, times the money multiplier equals 500 change. And the change is actually a decrease because they're selling bonds, right? They're selling those bonds, so it's smaller. The money supply is smaller. Now, this A says change in reserves in the banking system. Now, here's the part where actually this isn't that easy, or this isn't that hard. If you know the maximum change in the money supply, well, how much of this money supply did they have to keep in reserves? 10%. So what's 10% of 500? 500 times 10% is 50. And that's also going to be a decrease. So it's a decrease of 50, and that's actually the initial amount that they sold these bonds. The initial decrease is exactly the same. So that would always be true because inevitably what you're doing is you're just multiplying by the reciprocal of the money multiplier. Now, part C says draw a graph with the money market and show the effect on the interest rate. So we do QM, nominal interest rate. We have a money supply curve, money demand curve, and there's a second money supply curve because they're selling bonds. It's a decrease. So we know we go from Q1 to Q2. They didn't ask us to show that, but it's a good idea to do it anyways. We have some new interest rates, and we went from I sub 1 to I sub 2, and the interest rate went up. So that goes from here to here. Hopefully this helps you understand problem set 8.4, and I'll see you next time.